Every overreaction, every regret, every bad decision, it all comes from losing control of your emotions. In this audiobook, you'll learn how to stay composed, unshakable, and always in control, no matter what life throws at you. The Composed Mind. Audiobook Introduction. Your hands shake as you slam the car door, heart pounding with rage after that heated argument with your boss. In that moment of fury, you fired off that email, the one you're already regretting. Sound familiar? Or perhaps it was that impulsive decision you made when anxiety clouded your judgment, or those harsh words you spat at someone you love because fear got the better of you. Here's a truth that might sting. You don't control your emotions. They control you. But this isn't your fault. You've been sold a lie, taught that emotions are waves that crash over you, forces you must weather rather than waves you can learn to surf. Society tells you to just feel your feelings or express yourself authentically, as if being at the mercy of every emotional impulse is somehow healthy or brave. What if I told you there's another way? That emotional mastery isn't about suppression or denial, but about power, real, practical power over how you respond to life's challenges. The kind of power that lets you feel anger without letting it destroy relationships, experience fear without letting it paralyze you, face stress without crumbling. True emotional composure isn't a gift bestowed upon a lucky few. It's a skill, as trainable as building muscle or learning a language. Through this audiobook, you'll develop this skill step by step, building an unshakable foundation of emotional intelligence that will serve you in every area of your life. By the time you finish this journey, you'll possess something invaluable: the ability to remain calm under pressure, respond rather than react, and navigate life's storms with unwavering clarity. But this transformation requires your full commitment. Your future, your relationships, your career, your peace of mind depends on the decision you make right now. Chapter 1. You are not your emotions. Your hands grip the steering wheel so tight your knuckles turn white. Blood pounds in your ears, drowning out the rational voice trying to break through the fog of rage. The words from that meeting replay in an endless loop. The dismissive tone, the subtle insult, the way they talked over you. Before you know it, you're crafting that scathing email, fingers flying across your phone screen, hitting send before your better judgment can catch up. We've all been there. That moment when emotion hijacks our brain, when we become a passenger in our own life, watching helplessly as our feelings drive us straight into a wall of regret. Tomorrow, you'll wonder why you let it affect you so deeply. Next week, that incident that seemed earth-shattering will fade to a minor annoyance. But in the moment, it consumed you completely. Here's what nobody tells you about emotions. They lie, not sometimes, constantly. Anger whispers that you've been mortally wounded when you've barely been scratched. Anxiety paints catastrophic futures that never materialize. Fear magnifies shadows into monsters. Your emotions are not reality. They're interpretations of reality, filtered through layers of past experiences, beliefs, and biological responses that evolved for a world that no longer exists. Think about it. How many times has your emotional brain convinced you that something was absolutely unbearable, only for you to look back months later and barely remember what the fuss was about? How often have your feelings promised you that something would fix everything or ruin everything, only to be proven dramatically wrong? Viktor Frankl discovered this truth in the most extreme circumstances imaginable. As a psychiatrist imprisoned in Nazi concentration camps, he faced daily horrors that would break most people. Yet in this crucible of human suffering, he made a revolutionary discovery. While he couldn't control what happened to him, he maintained absolute power over how he responded to it. Even as his captors stripped away every physical freedom, they couldn't touch his internal liberty, his ability to choose his mental response to any situation. In his seminal work, Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl wrote about a crucial moment of realization. Standing naked in the harsh cold, having lost everything, his family, his manuscript, his dignity, he discovered he could still choose his thoughts. He could still find meaning in suffering. He could separate his essential self from the tsunami of despair threatening to drown him. This wasn't positive thinking or emotional suppression. It was something far more powerful: the ability to observe emotions without being ruled by them. This separation, this space between what you feel and what you do, is where true power lies. Your emotions will always arise. They're an essential part of being human, but they don't have to drive the car. You can acknowledge their presence while keeping your hands firmly on the wheel. Observe Ethan, who poured 3 years and his life savings into a tech startup, only to watch it collapse in spectacular fashion. The failure hit him like a physical blow. Shame, despair, and self-doubt consumed his thoughts. For weeks he could barely leave his apartment, convinced he was a complete failure who would never succeed at anything. But slowly, through practicing mindful awareness, Ethan began to notice something. These emotions came in waves. When he stopped fighting them and started observing them instead, he saw their temporary nature. Yes, the pain was real. Yes, the disappointment was intense. But they were weather patterns passing through the sky of his consciousness, not the sky itself. This simple shift in perspective changed everything. Instead of being swept away by each emotional storm, Ethan learned to watch them pass. He still felt the full force of his feelings, but they no longer controlled his actions. He could acknowledge his fear while still sending out job applications. He could feel disappointment while brainstorming new business ideas. The emotions were there, but they no longer had the power to paralyze him. The next time you feel an emotional tsunami building, pause. Take a deep breath. Ask yourself, is this feeling telling me the truth? Or is it just a storm passing through? Give yourself permission to feel whatever arises, but remember, you don't have to act on it. The emotion is real. Its interpretation of reality often isn't. Your challenge for this week is simple but profound. When a strong emotion arises, set a timer for 90 seconds. Just observe the feeling without trying to change it, fight it, or act on it. Notice its intensity, its physical sensations, its urgent demands for action. Watch as it peaks and inevitably begins to fade. Do this once each day, and you'll start to see your emotions for what they truly are: temporary visitors, not permanent residents of your mind. Chapter 2. Breaking the Emotional Hijack. The basketball arcs through the air in perfect slow motion. Everything you've worked for comes down to this moment. The crowd holds its breath. The ball hits the rim, circles once, and falls away. Game over. You've missed the winning shot. In that split second, shame and anger flood your system. You slam the ball into the ground, shove past your teammates, and storm off the court. Later, you'll regret this display of emotion, but in that moment, you weren't thinking. You were reacting. Or maybe it's not a basketball game. Maybe it's watching your investment portfolio plummet, and panic drives you to sell everything at the worst possible moment. Or you're cut off in traffic, and suddenly you're tailgating dangerously close, consumed by road rage. The scenario changes, but the pattern remains the same. Emotion hijacks your brain, and rational thought takes a back seat. This hijacking isn't your fault. It's how your brain was designed to work. Deep within your skull, the amygdala, your emotional command center, stands ready to protect you from threats. It doesn't distinguish between a charging lion and a harsh email from your boss. To your ancient brain, threat is threat, and safety means survival. When the amygdala activates, It floods your system with stress hormones in milliseconds, long before your rational prefrontal cortex can weigh in. This worked perfectly when our ancestors needed split-second reactions to avoid predators. But in today's world, where most threats are psychological rather than physical, this hair-trigger emotional response often does more harm than good. Modern neuroscience has revealed that social pain, rejection, criticism, embarrassment activates the same neural circuits as physical pain. Your brain processes a cutting remark with the same urgency as a cutting blade. This explains why emotional wounds can feel so devastatingly real, why a public failure can hurt as much as a physical injury. Few people understand this better than Serena Williams, whose journey from emotional volatility to masterful composure offers a powerful lesson in emotional regulation. Early in her career, Williams was known for explosive outbursts that often undermined her extraordinary talent. The 2009 U.S. Open semifinals against Kim Clijsters marked a notorious low point, an emotional hijack that resulted in a point penalty on match point, costing her the game. But what's truly remarkable isn't the outburst, it's what came after. Williams embarked on a deliberate journey to master her emotional responses. She worked with performance psychologists to understand her triggers and developed specific strategies to maintain composure under pressure. The results were transformative. In countless high-stakes matches that followed, she demonstrated an ability to channel intense emotions into focused performance rather than letting them derail her game. During the 2015 U.S. Open quarterfinals, facing her sister Venus in an emotionally charged match, Serena showed this newfound mastery. When crucial points didn't go her way, instead of erupting, she would take a deep breath, adjust her strings, and reset her focus. She had learned to create that crucial space between trigger and response, the space where choice lives. This is the key to breaking the emotional hijack. Recognizing that between stimulus and response lies a gap, and in that gap lies our power to choose our reaction. The gap might be microscopically small at first, but with practice it can be widened. The process starts with awareness. Your body always signals an emotional hijack before your conscious mind recognizes it. A tightening in your chest, a flush of heat in your face, a clenching of your jaw. These physical cues are your early warning system. When you notice them, you've already begun to break the hijack's power. The next step is to name what you're feeling. Neuroscience has shown that the simple act of labeling an emotion, "I'm feeling angry," or "this is anxiety," reduces its intensity. It engages your prefrontal cortex, bringing online the very part of your brain that can regulate emotional responses. Consider Maya, a high school English teacher facing a particularly challenging student who seemed determined to disrupt her class. One day, after this student had repeatedly interrupted her lesson with sarcastic comments, Maya felt the familiar signs of an emotional hijack building: racing heart, tightening throat, the urge to snap back harshly. But this time was different. She recognized these physical signals for what they were: her amygdala preparing for fight or flight. Instead of reacting, she paused, took a deep breath, named what she was feeling. This is frustration. In that small gap she created, a new perspective emerged. She saw past her student's behavior to the insecurity driving it. Rather than engaging in a power struggle, Maya calmly asked the student to stay after class. In that private conversation, free from the audience of peers, she learned that family problems at home were fueling his acting out. This moment of emotional regulation didn't just prevent a conflict. It created an opportunity for genuine connection and understanding. The same principles that helped Maya can work in any situation where emotions threaten to overwhelm reason. Whether you're facing a crucial presentation, a difficult conversation, or a personal crisis, the ability to break the emotional hijack comes down to 3 key skills. First, learn to recognize your physical warning signs. Every person's emotional signals are slightly different. For some, anger manifests as heat in the face. For others, it's a tightness in the shoulders. Anxiety might show up as a churning stomach or shallow breathing. Start paying attention to these bodily messages. They're your first line of defense against emotional hijacking. Second, develop a pattern interrupt, a pre-planned response that creates space between trigger and reaction. This could be as simple as taking 3 deep breaths, counting backward from 10, or mentally reciting a calm-inducing phrase. The specific technique matters less than having it ready when you need it. Third, practice emotional labeling. Get specific about what you're feeling. Instead of letting emotions remain a vague storm of discomfort, name them precisely, "I'm feeling disappointed and embarrassed," rather than just, "I feel bad." This precision helps your brain shift from emotional reactivity to rational response. Chapter 3. Breaking Free from the Digital Dopamine Loop. You reach for your phone before your eyes are fully open. A rush of notifications floods your screen. Likes, comments, messages, news alerts. Each ping triggers a tiny surge of excitement, a microscopic hit of pleasure. Before you know it, 30 minutes have vanished into mindless scrolling. You're late for work, slightly anxious, and somehow already emotionally drained, all before breakfast. This isn't just a bad habit. It's a carefully engineered addiction. Every notification, every like, every angry headline is designed to hijack your emotional circuitry. That familiar urge to check your phone? It's powered by the same neurochemical, dopamine, that drives all addictive behaviors. But unlike traditional addictions, this one is socially acceptable, even encouraged. We call it staying connected or being informed, but in reality, it's keeping us perpetually distracted, reactive, and emotionally unstable. The average person checks their phone 96 times per day, once every 10 minutes of waking life. Each check creates a small emotional spike: anticipation, pleasure, disappointment, outrage, or anxiety. Your brain, designed for survival in nature, now exists in a constant state of artificial emotional arousal. It's like living with your finger permanently stuck in an electrical socket. This digital dopamine loop isn't an accident. It's the product of thousands of engineers and psychologists working to keep you emotionally engaged, and therefore profitable. Every feature, from the pull to refresh mechanism to the 3 dots that appear when someone's typing, is crafted to create anticipation and emotional investment. Tristan Harris, a former Google design ethicist turned tech whistleblower, exposed how deliberately these systems are designed to exploit human psychology. During his time in Silicon Valley, he witnessed firsthand how companies use what he calls persuasive technology to keep users hooked. The goal isn't to enhance our lives, but to maximize time spent, because more screen time means more advertising revenue. In a revealing interview, Harris explained how social media platforms specifically target the brain's reward system. "It's not just about addiction," he said. "It's about creating emotional dependency. The more emotionally reactive we are, the more we engage, share, and stay on the platform." He described how algorithms are trained to promote content that triggers strong emotional responses, particularly outrage and anxiety, because these emotions drive the most engagement. This manipulation goes beyond just wasting time. It's rewiring your brain to crave constant emotional stimulation. When you're not getting it, you feel restless, empty, disconnected. The quiet moments that once allowed for deep thought and emotional processing now feel unbearable. You've become addicted to the very thing that's destroying your emotional composure. The good news? Like any addiction, this one can be broken. But it requires understanding how deeply these systems have infiltrated your emotional life and taking deliberate steps to reclaim control. Let's talk about Liam, a high school junior who noticed his mood swinging wildly throughout the day. One moment he'd feel elated about getting likes on a post, the next devastated by seeing friends at a party he wasn't invited to. His concentration was shot, his anxiety was spiking, and he couldn't seem to focus on anything for more than a few minutes. The turning point came when he tracked his phone usage and discovered he was spending over 7 hours daily on social media. More importantly, he started noting his emotional state after each session. The pattern was clear: brief highs followed by longer periods of dissatisfaction and restlessness. Liam didn't quit cold turkey. That rarely works. Instead, he began with small changes. He turned off all notifications except calls and messages from family. He moved social media apps to a folder on the second screen of his phone, adding friction to the impulse to check them. He set specific times for checking platforms instead of responding to every alert. The first few days were uncomfortable. He felt phantom vibrations in his pocket. His fingers itched to scroll during quiet moments. But gradually, something shifted. His attention span lengthened. He found himself having deeper conversations with friends when hanging out. Most surprisingly, his emotions became more stable, less reactive to every tiny trigger, and more grounded in real experiences. Within a month, Liam's screen time had dropped by 70%. But the real victory wasn't in the numbers, it was in how he felt. "It's like I was living in a storm of other people's emotions and reactions," he said. "Now I can actually hear myself think." Breaking free from digital emotional manipulation isn't about becoming a Luddite. It's about reclaiming your attention, and by extension, your emotional stability. Start by asking yourself, how many of your emotional reactions each day are genuinely yours, and how many are programmed responses to digital triggers? Your challenge for today: turn off all non-essential notifications for 24 hours. No social media alerts, no news updates, no likes or comments. Just calls and messages from people who matter most. Notice how your emotional landscape changes when you're not being constantly prompted to react. Pay attention to the urges to check your phone. What emotions drive them? What happens when you sit with those feelings instead of immediately seeking digital distraction? Chapter 4: The Authenticity Trap. You're typing furiously, fingers shaking with righteous anger. Someone is wrong on the internet, and you're going to let them know exactly how you feel. "I'm just keeping it real," you tell yourself as you craft that scathing response. "I'm being authentic." The rush of emotional release feels good, powerful even. But hours later, when the adrenaline fades, you stare at your words with a creeping sense of regret. Sound familiar? We live in an age that worships emotional authenticity. Speak your truth. Let it all out. Don't hold back. These mantras flood our social media feeds and self-help books. Being real has become synonymous with being reactive, as if emotional restraint somehow equals dishonesty. But this widespread belief has created a culture of impulsivity masquerading as authenticity. Think about it. When was the last time an emotional outburst actually served you well? When did unleashing your raw feelings in the heat of the moment lead to a better outcome? More often than not, these moments of authentic expression leave wreckage in their wake. Damaged relationships, professional setbacks, and the quiet shame of knowing you could have handled things differently. The truth is, we've been sold a dangerous myth that authentic emotion means unfiltered emotion. This belief system has convinced millions that self-control is somehow fake, that impulse equals truth, and that raw emotional expression is always virtuous. It's time to expose this for what it is: a fundamental misunderstanding of both emotions and authenticity. Your emotions are not your truth, they're your weather. Just as you wouldn't let a passing storm determine your life decisions, you shouldn't let temporary emotional states dictate your actions. True authenticity isn't about expressing every feeling that crosses your mind. It's about aligning your actions with your deepest values and long-term goals. Steve Jobs, despite being celebrated as a visionary leader, initially struggled with this very challenge. In the early days of Apple, his emotional volatility was legendary. He would berate employees in public, have explosive outbursts over minor design details, and let his frustrations dictate crucial business decisions. His authenticity often meant unchecked emotional reactions that damaged relationships and ultimately led to his temporary exile from the company he founded. But Jobs' journey teaches us something crucial about emotional mastery. After his humbling departure from Apple, he began to understand that his emotions, while intense and real, weren't always right. During his years running Pixar, he developed what his colleagues called Steve 2.0, someone who could channel his passionate intensity without being controlled by it. When he returned to Apple in 1997, the change was evident. While still demanding and deeply emotional about his work, Jobs had learned to pause before reacting. He still felt everything intensely, but he chose how to express it. In meetings, he would often fall silent when presented with ideas he disliked, a dramatic shift from his earlier habit of immediate, cutting criticism. This wasn't him being less authentic, it was him being more intentional. The difference, noted one longtime colleague, was that Steve learned to use his emotions rather than let them use him. He was still the most passionate person in any room, but now that passion served a purpose rather than derailing it. This transformation wasn't about suppressing emotions or becoming cold and calculated. Instead, Jobs developed what psychologists call emotional granularity, the ability to distinguish between different emotional states and choose appropriate responses. He remained intensely authentic but learned that authenticity doesn't mean emotional impulsivity. Understanding this distinction is crucial for your own emotional mastery. Every emotion you feel is real, but not every emotion deserves expression. Some emotions are like false alarms. They feel urgent in the moment but signal nothing of real importance. Others are like warning lights on your car's dashboard. They deserve attention, but not panic. Think about Ava, a rising star at a major news outlet. Known for her "tell it like it is" attitude, she prided herself on emotional honesty. When frustrated with assignments, she'd voice it immediately. When disagreeing with editorial decisions, she'd challenge them publicly. "I'm just being real" became her catchphrase, delivered with a shrug after each confrontation. Her authenticity, she believed, made her special. But her colleagues saw something different, someone whose emotions controlled her professional judgment. The turning point came when she was passed over for a promotion. "Your talent is obvious," her editor explained, "but leadership requires emotional intelligence, not just emotional honesty." Initially defensive, Ava eventually recognized that her authentic reactions were actually habitual responses, often triggered by past experiences rather than present reality. With help from a mentor, she developed a new approach, the 24-hour rule. Before expressing strong emotions about work issues, she'd wait a day, writing her feelings in a private journal, instead of voicing them immediately. This pause allowed her to separate the emotion from the issue. Often, she discovered that her initial reaction had more to do with old triggers than current circumstances. When she did decide to speak up, she could do so strategically rather than reactively. Her feedback became more valuable because it came from reflection rather than impulse. The irony, Ava later reflected, is that I'm actually more authentic now. Before, I was just a puppet of my immediate emotions. Now I choose how to express myself based on my values and goals, not just my feelings in the moment. Emotional intelligence isn't about suppressing your feelings. It's about expressing them wisely. True authenticity means being honest with yourself first, understanding your emotional triggers, and choosing responses that align with your deeper values rather than your immediate impulses. Your challenge for the next week. Before expressing strong emotions, especially in digital spaces, implement the notes before posts rule. When you feel the urge to react emotionally, open your notes app instead of social media. Write exactly what you want to say, uncensored and raw. Then wait 24 hours. Come back and ask yourself, does this emotional response serve my authentic self or just my immediate feelings? Would expressing this bring me closer to or further from the person I want to be? Chapter 5. The Power of the Pause. Have you ever watched your life change in a single moment? 1 second, everything is normal. The next, your world turns upside down. The screech of tires on asphalt. The ping of an unexpected email announcing layoffs. The words of betrayal from someone you trusted. Time seems to freeze, yet your emotions explode into chaos. In these moments, your brain floods with cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart pounds. Your muscles tense. Everything in your body screams for immediate action. Fight, flee, or freeze. This is your evolutionary programming taking over, treating every crisis as if it were a prehistoric predator. But here's what most people never realize. This automatic response, while natural, is rarely helpful in our modern world. The solutions to today's complex challenges seldom come from our first impulsive reaction. The key to emotional mastery isn't in the speed of your response. It's in your ability to create space between trigger and action. This space, this precious pause, is where your power lives. Observe Nelson Mandela's extraordinary journey. For 27 years, he was imprisoned in a tiny cell on Robben Island. Every day brought fresh humiliation, degradation, and reasons for rage. The natural response would have been to let anger consume him, to let bitterness shape his character. Instead, Mandela did something remarkable. He used his imprisonment as a laboratory for emotional mastery. In his autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom, Mandela describes how he learned to create space between provocation and response. When guards would taunt him, he would pause, sometimes counting his breaths, before deciding how to react. When fellow prisoners urged immediate violent resistance, he would take time to consider the long-term consequences. This wasn't passive acceptance. It was strategic composure. Mandela understood that his reactions would either perpetuate cycles of violence or create possibilities for peace. Through daily practice, he expanded the space between stimulus and response, transforming it into a moment of choice rather than compulsion. The results were revolutionary. Upon his release, instead of seeking revenge, Mandela emerged with an unprecedented capacity for reconciliation. When asked how he avoided bitterness, he famously said, "As I walked out the door toward the gate that would lead to my freedom, I knew if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I'd still be in prison." This wasn't just personal philosophy. It was practical psychology. Modern neuroscience confirms what Mandela discovered through experience. The brain's initial emotional response doesn't have to dictate our actions. When we create space, even just a few seconds, we activate our prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain responsible for rational thinking and emotional regulation. This space is your superpower. It's the difference between sending that angry email you'll regret and crafting a response that solves the actual problem. It's the gap between making an impulse purchase that drains your savings and pausing to consider your financial goals. It's the moment between feeling hurt by someone's words and choosing a response that preserves the relationship. Noah, a senior manager at a tech startup, discovered this power during a critical moment. Late one evening, he received an email from a junior team member. The employee had made a significant mistake on a key project, one that could cost the company thousands of dollars. Noah felt his blood pressure rise as he read the details. His fingers hovering over the keyboard, he began composing a scathing response. But something made him stop. The lessons about emotional space flashed through his mind. Instead of hitting send, he closed his laptop. He took 3 deep breaths. Then he asked himself, what outcome do I actually want here? The next morning, with a clearer head, Noah saw the situation differently. Yes, the mistake was serious. But a harsh response wouldn't undo the error. It would only damage team morale and discourage future initiative. Instead, he called a meeting to understand what went wrong and work on preventive measures for the future. The result? The team member not only fixed the immediate issue but became one of the company's most careful and valuable employees. Months later, when asked about the turning point in his career, he pointed to that meeting. I expected to be torn apart. Instead, I learned how to grow from failure. This is the power of the pause in action. It's not about suppressing your initial reaction. It's about creating space to choose a better one. Every time you pause before reacting, you strengthen this ability. It's like building a muscle. The more you practice, the stronger it becomes. The key is starting small. Don't wait for life-altering moments to practice this skill. Begin with everyday triggers. When your phone buzzes with a notification, pause before checking it. When someone cuts you off in traffic, take a breath before responding. When you feel the urge to interrupt someone, create space to listen fully. Each of these small moments is an opportunity to expand your space between stimulus and response. Each pause is a chance to choose wisdom over reaction, intention over impulse. Chapter 6: The Alchemy of Emotion. You're standing at the edge of an emotional precipice. Your hands tremble with anger. Your stomach churns with anxiety, or your heart aches with disappointment. These feelings seem like enemies, unwanted invaders threatening to derail your life. But what if these very emotions could become your greatest allies? Think about the last time a powerful emotion gripped you. Maybe it was rage at being overlooked for a promotion, fear before a crucial presentation, or crushing disappointment after a failed relationship. Like most people, you probably tried to suppress these feelings, push them away, or let them consume you. But there's another way, a way to transform this raw emotional energy into pure power. Every emotion carries energy. This isn't just metaphorical, it's biological. When you feel angry, your body floods with adrenaline. When you're anxious, your senses sharpen. When you're passionate, your focus intensifies. The secret isn't in fighting these responses, it's in redirecting them. Michael Jordan's story perfectly illustrates this principle of emotional alchemy. In 1978, Jordan was cut from his high school varsity basketball team. For many teenagers, this rejection would have been devastating, leading to self-doubt or giving up. Instead, Jordan did something remarkable. He transformed his humiliation into determination. He would wake up at 6 a.m. every morning to practice before school. He channeled his anger into thousands of shots, countless drills, and endless hours of training. Whenever I was working out and got tired and figured I ought to stop, I'd close my eyes and see that list in the locker room without my name on it, Jordan later revealed. That usually got me going again. This wasn't just about working harder. Jordan had mastered emotional alchemy, the art of converting painful feelings into productive energy. When critics doubted him, he didn't waste energy defending himself. He let their skepticism fuel his drive. When opponents trash-talked, he didn't lose focus with angry reactions. He transformed that emotion into laser-sharp concentration. The results speak for themselves. 6 NBA championships, 5 MVP awards, and recognition as the greatest basketball player of all time. But more importantly, Jordan demonstrated that emotional mastery isn't about suppressing strong feelings. It's about harnessing their power. The same principle applies to every emotion. Anger can become determination. Anxiety can sharpen preparation. Fear can heighten focus. Frustration can fuel innovation. Sadness can deepen empathy. The key is learning to direct this emotional energy rather than letting it direct you. Think of emotions like water. They can either flood and destroy, or they can be channeled to generate power. Isla, a digital artist in Seattle, discovered this truth during the darkest period of her career. After receiving brutal criticism for her latest work, she found herself paralyzed by self-doubt. Every time she opened her tablet to create, voices of criticism echoed in her mind. Her usual response would have been to retreat, to play it safe with conventional designs. Instead, she made a conscious decision to transform her emotional energy. Rather than letting fear suppress her creativity, she used it to fuel bold experimentation. She channeled her anger at the critics into more daring color choices. She transformed her anxiety about failure into meticulous attention to detail. The result? She created her most powerful series yet, work that got featured in major digital art platforms and launched her career to new heights. When asked about the inspiration behind the collection, she said, "I stopped fighting my emotions and started using them as colors on my palette. Your emotions are waiting to be transformed. That surge of anger, it's potential energy for positive change. That knot of anxiety, it's your system preparing for peak performance. That ache of sadness, it's an opportunity to develop deeper understanding. For the next week, practice emotional alchemy. When a strong emotion arises, don't rush to suppress it or express it raw. Instead, pause and ask yourself, how can I use this energy? Take that frustration with your current situation and channel it into planning your next move. Transform worry about an upcoming challenge into thorough preparation. The power is already within you. It's time to become the alchemist of your own emotional life. Chapter 7. Breaking the Trigger Code. Your heart races, your muscles tense. A simple comment from a colleague about your presentation style sends you spiraling into defensive anger. Or perhaps it's that subtle tone in your partner's voice that instantly floods you with shame. Maybe it's the way someone dismisses your idea in a meeting, triggering a wave of inadequacy that feels completely out of proportion. These aren't just reactions, they're emotional triggers, and they're running your life more than you realize. Think about your most recent emotional explosion. Was the trigger really about the present moment, or did it tap into something deeper, an old wound, a forgotten slight, a buried fear? Most people believe their emotional reactions are responses to current events. But the truth is far more complex. Your triggers are actually carefully programmed responses, coded into your nervous system by years of experience and belief. Understanding this programming is the first step to breaking free from it. Every emotional trigger has a history, a story that explains why certain situations hit you harder than others. It's like having invisible buttons scattered throughout your psyche, and when life presses them, you react automatically, often in ways that don't serve your present reality. Oprah Winfrey's journey with emotional triggers offers a masterclass in this understanding. Growing up in poverty, facing racial discrimination, and surviving childhood trauma, Oprah had every reason to let her triggers define her. Early in her career, criticism would send her into spirals of self-doubt and people-pleasing behavior, reactions programmed by her challenging past. But Oprah did something remarkable. She began studying her triggers instead of being controlled by them. When a producer told her she was too emotional for television, instead of letting this trigger her old wounds about not being good enough, she paused to examine why this comment held such power over her. I realized that every time someone questioned my abilities, I wasn't really reacting to them. I was reacting to every person who had ever doubted me, starting from childhood, Oprah later revealed. This awareness became her superpower. Instead of letting triggers dictate her responses, she used them as signposts, pointing to areas where she needed healing and reprogramming. Over time, Oprah developed what she calls her internal feedback loop, a practice of questioning her emotional reactions before acting on them. When faced with criticism, instead of automatically defending or withdrawing, she would ask herself, "What's really being triggered here? Is this about now, or is this about then?" This process of self-inquiry transformed her relationship with emotional triggers. Rather than being controlled by them, she learned to use them as tools for growth and self-understanding. The same criticism that once would have devastated her became fuel for self-improvement and authentic expression. The key insight from Oprah's experience is that triggers don't have to control you, but you must first understand their language. Every trigger speaks to an unhealed part of yourself, a belief system that needs updating, or a boundary that needs strengthening. Think of your emotional triggers like outdated software running in your brain. Just as old programs can slow down a computer, old emotional programming can hijack your responses to present situations. But just like software, this programming can be updated. Here's how to begin the reprogramming process. First, recognize that triggers are messengers. When you feel that disproportionate emotional response, it's your psyche trying to tell you something important about your underlying beliefs and unmet needs. Second, practice the pause. When triggered, create space between the stimulus and your response. This space is where your power lies. It's where you can choose a new response rather than falling into old patterns. Third, investigate with curiosity rather than judgment. Ask yourself, what does this reaction remind me of? When was the first time I felt this way? What belief about myself am I protecting? Caleb, a gifted pianist in Boston, lived this transformation firsthand. Every time he prepared for a performance, he would be overwhelmed by anxiety so severe it threatened to derail his career. On the surface, this seemed like simple stage fright, but through careful self-examination, he discovered the real trigger, a humiliating piano recital at age 8, where he forgot his piece and was ridiculed by his teacher. I realized I wasn't just afraid of performing, I was afraid of repeating that moment of shame, Caleb explains. Every performance was triggering that 8-year-old's fear of humiliation. Armed with this understanding, Caleb began the work of reprogramming his trigger response. Before each performance, instead of letting anxiety take over, he would acknowledge his younger self's fear while reminding himself that he was no longer that vulnerable child. He developed a pre-performance ritual of mentally rehearsing successful outcomes rather than catastrophic ones. Most importantly, he learned to see his trigger as information rather than a command to panic. When anxiety arose, instead of fighting it, he would think, there's that old programming trying to protect me, but I don't need that protection anymore. The results were transformative. Within 6 months, Caleb went from barely being able to perform to giving confident recitals. His trigger didn't disappear completely, but it no longer controlled him. Your triggers are waiting to teach you similar lessons. They're not your enemies. They're encrypted messages from your past, waiting to be decoded and reprogrammed. Every trigger points to a belief that needs examining, a wound that needs healing, or a strength that needs developing. For the next week, become a detective of your own emotional triggers. When you feel that familiar surge of disproportionate emotion, don't rush to react. Instead, pause and ask yourself, what's really being triggered here? What old story is being activated? What belief is this response protecting? Write down your findings. Look for patterns. Each trigger you decode is another step toward emotional freedom. Remember, you're not trying to eliminate triggers. You're learning their language so you can choose how to respond to them. The power to reprogram your triggers lies within you. It's time to start speaking their language and writing a new emotional code. Chapter 8. The Art of Emotional Minimalism. Your mind is like a room that's been collecting clutter for years. Every unresolved argument, each lingering regret, all those what-if scenarios. They pile up like old newspapers and forgotten trinkets, consuming valuable mental space. You hold on to past hurts like worn-out clothes you'll never wear again, letting them take up room that could be filled with peace and possibility. Think about how much emotional weight you're carrying right now. The colleague who slighted you 3 years ago. The relationship that ended badly. The mistake that still makes you cringe. The constant comparison to others' success. Each of these thoughts and feelings occupies precious mental real estate, cluttering your emotional space until there's barely room to breathe. Most people don't realize they're emotional hoarders. They collect grievances like collectibles, stack anxieties like old magazines, and pile resentments in corners of their mind until they can barely move through their own thoughts without stumbling over past pain. The solution isn't more storage space, it's emotional minimalism. Marcus Aurelius, ruling the vast Roman Empire at its height, understood this profound truth. Despite having every reason to be consumed by the complexities of power, wealth, and constant threats to his rule, he maintained remarkable mental clarity through deliberate emotional simplicity. In his personal writings, later published as Meditations, Marcus revealed his practice of regular mental decluttering. Get rid of the judgment, get rid of the I am hurt. You get rid of the hurt itself. He understood that most emotional suffering comes from our attachment to things we cannot control and our reluctance to let go of what no longer serves us. Each morning, Marcus would examine his mental space, consciously choosing which concerns deserved his attention and which were merely cluttering his mind. When faced with betrayal from his closest allies or the death of loved ones, he wouldn't allow these events to accumulate as emotional baggage. Instead, he would acknowledge them, extract any useful lessons, and then deliberately let them go. This wasn't denial or suppression, it was strategic emotional minimalism. Marcus recognized that carrying unnecessary emotional weight would only hinder his ability to lead effectively and live purposefully. He famously wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." His approach teaches us that emotional composure isn't about having no feelings. It's about being selective about which feelings we give permanent residence in our minds. Nina, a corporate attorney in Chicago, discovered this truth the hard way. Her mind was a warehouse of accumulated stress. Every difficult case, every challenging client, every minor professional slight stored away and taking up space. She prided herself on her ability to remember every detail, but this mental hoarding was suffocating her ability to find peace. "I thought keeping track of every potential problem and past mistake made me thorough," Nina recalls, "but I was just weighing myself down with unnecessary emotional inventory." The turning point came during a particularly stressful merger case. While preparing for a crucial meeting, Nina realized she couldn't focus because her mind was too cluttered with worries about past cases and future scenarios. She began applying the principles of emotional minimalism, starting with a simple question. Does this thought or feeling serve my present purpose? She started small, letting go of minor irritations that wouldn't matter in a year. Then she tackled bigger emotional clutter, releasing grudges against former colleagues, accepting past decisions she couldn't change, and stopping the constant mental replay of old conversations. The difference was immediate, Nina says. It was like clearing out a cramped apartment. Suddenly, I had room to think, to breathe, to focus on what actually mattered. Within months, Nina's colleagues noticed the change. She was more present in meetings, more decisive in negotiations, and notably calmer under pressure. By maintaining less emotional inventory, she had created space for clarity and composure. The process of emotional decluttering isn't always easy, but it's transformative. Start by examining the emotional items you're storing. Are you keeping archives of old arguments, replaying them in your mind? let them go. Have you built a collection of should-haves and could-haves? Release them. Are you stockpiling worries about things you can't control? Clear them out. Each time you feel overwhelmed or reactive, ask yourself, is this emotional item worth the space it's taking up in my mind? For the next 7 days, choose one piece of emotional clutter each morning to release. It might be a grudge you've been nursing, a regret you keep revisiting, or a worry about something beyond your control. Notice how much lighter you feel with each item you let go. Remember, emotional minimalism isn't about becoming empty. It's about making room for what truly matters. When you clear the clutter, you create space for peace, clarity, and purposeful action. What emotional item will you let go of today? Chapter 9. Indifference to Chaos. Picture this moment. You're standing in an airport terminal, staring at the departure board as your flight status changes from on time to delayed to canceled. Around you, chaos erupts. Other passengers shout at airline staff, frantically dial their phones or slump in defeat. Your plans are derailed, your schedule in shambles. Your heart rate begins to climb. But what if you could stand in this storm of uncertainty completely unmoved? Not suppressing your frustration, not forcing fake positivity, but genuinely unshaken by the chaos around you. Life constantly throws us into turbulent waters. A major client backs out at the last minute. Your carefully planned presentation crashes right before the meeting. Your child melts down in the grocery store while judgmental eyes bore into you. These moments test not just our patience, but our very character. Most people's response to chaos is predictable. They match the energy of the disruption. They become as frantic as the situation they're facing. But this reaction doesn't serve us. It only amplifies the problem and clouds our judgment when we need it most. The ancient Stoics understood a profound truth. External chaos only has the power we give it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This isn't just philosophical wisdom. It's a practical approach to maintaining composure when everything around you falls apart. Winston Churchill embodied this principle during Britain's darkest hours in World War II. As German bombs rained down on London during the Blitz, Churchill maintained an unwavering composure that became legendary. While others rushed to panic stations, he calmly conducted meetings in underground bunkers, often pausing mid-conversation during bomb blasts to simply continue his point once the noise subsided. This wasn't natural immunity to stress. It was cultivated indifference to chaos. Churchill had trained himself to remain steady, regardless of external circumstances. During the evacuation of Dunkirk, when military advisors were losing their composure, Churchill maintained his characteristic calm, allowing him to think clearly and make decisions that ultimately helped save thousands of lives. His secret wasn't suppressing fear or concern. It was understanding that panic adds nothing of value to any situation. He famously said, "When you're going through hell, keep going." This wasn't blind optimism. It was strategic composure. Churchill's example teaches us that true power lies not in controlling external events, but in controlling our response to them. He demonstrated that leadership isn't about never feeling fear. It's about maintaining clarity despite it. The key to developing this level of composure lies in 3 core practices. First, negative visualization. Mentally rehearsing potential challenges before they arise. By removing the element of surprise, you strip chaos of its power to overwhelm you. Second, emotional decoupling. Training yourself to see events as neutral until you assign them meaning. A canceled flight isn't inherently good or bad. It's simply a change in circumstances that requires adaptation. Third, voluntary discomfort. Deliberately seeking out small challenges to build your resilience muscle. This could be taking cold showers, fasting for a day, or working in complete silence. Leo, a restaurant owner in Boston, discovered the power of these principles during what could have been a catastrophic evening. 2 hours before a major wedding reception, his main supplier called to say they couldn't deliver the ordered ingredients. The kitchen staff began to panic, and the wedding coordinator was on the verge of tears. Instead of joining the emotional spiral, Leo took a deep breath. He had mentally prepared for such scenarios. Negative visualization at work. He saw the situation not as a disaster, but as a neutral event requiring a solution. Within minutes, he had mobilized his team to source ingredients from 3 local restaurants he had built relationships with, actually creating an even more diverse menu than originally planned. The old me would have lost it, Leo recalls, but panic would have only slowed down our problem solving. By staying composed, we turned a potential disaster into one of our most successful events. The wedding party later commented that they had no idea there had been any issues. In fact, they praised the unique menu combinations that arose from necessity. Leo's composure not only saved the evening but strengthened his business relationships and team confidence. Your challenge for the next 7 days. When chaos enters your life, and it will, resist the urge to match its energy. Instead, pause and ask yourself, does this truly deserve my panic? Or is it just another opportunity to practice indifference to chaos? Chapter 10. The Art of Rising. You've just taken a devastating hit. Maybe it's a rejection letter from your dream job, a relationship ending without warning, a business venture failing spectacularly. Your chest tightens, your confidence crumbles, and for a moment, you wonder if you'll ever recover. This is your moment on the canvas, gasping, disoriented, with the count starting. But here's what most people get wrong about emotional resilience. It's not about staying on your feet. It's about what you do when you hit the ground. Think of emotional resilience like a spring, not a shield. A shield tries to prevent impact, and eventually cracks under enough pressure. A spring absorbs the hit and uses that very energy to bounce back. This is the secret that separates those who crumble from those who emerge stronger after every setback. The science behind this is fascinating. When researchers study the brain's response to adversity, they find something counterintuitive. It's not the people who avoid stress who develop the strongest emotional control. It's those who learn to recover from it efficiently. Each time you bounce back from a setback, you're literally rewiring your neural pathways, building stronger circuits for future resilience. This mirrors what sports psychologists call stress inoculation, the phenomenon where controlled exposure to challenge actually enhances performance under pressure. Just as a vaccine works by introducing a manageable version of a threat, allowing your immune system to build resistance, emotional resilience grows through facing and overcoming successive challenges. J.K. Rowling's journey exemplifies this principle in action. Before Harry Potter became a global phenomenon, Rowling hit what she describes as rock bottom. She was a single mother on welfare, dealing with depression, and facing constant rejection from publishers. But what's remarkable isn't just that she persevered, it's how she transformed her relationship with failure. Rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life, Rowling later reflected. She didn't just endure rejection, she learned to expect it as part of the process. Each no strengthened her resolve rather than weakening it. When her manuscript was rejected 12 times, she didn't see 12 failures. She saw 12 steps closer to finding the right publisher. What's crucial to understand about Rowling's story is that she didn't possess some mythical immunity to doubt or fear. She felt every rejection acutely, but she developed what psychologists call recovery velocity, the speed at which you can reset after an emotional impact. Instead of letting setbacks derail her for weeks or months, she learned to process them in days or hours. This is where most people go wrong with emotional resilience. They try to build walls so high that nothing can hurt them. But this approach is fundamentally flawed. It makes you rigid rather than resilient. True emotional resilience is about developing a faster recovery time, not avoiding the hit altogether. The key lies in 3 core practices. First, embrace the anti-fragile mindset. Anti-fragility, a concept developed by Nassim Taleb, goes beyond resilience. While resilient things resist damage, anti-fragile things actually get stronger from disorder and stress. Your emotional capacity can work the same way. Each challenge you overcome builds greater strength for the next one. Second, develop recovery rituals, specific practices that help you reset after emotional impacts. These aren't about suppressing feelings, but about processing them efficiently. They might include physical exercise, meditation, or structured reflection time. Third, maintain perspective through what psychologists call temporal distancing, mentally projecting yourself into the future to see how temporary current struggles are. This doesn't minimize present pain, but helps prevent it from feeling permanent. David, a firefighter with 15 years of experience, embodies these principles in his daily life. Early in his career, he struggled with post-incident stress. Each challenging call would stay with him for days, affecting his sleep and mood. But over time, he developed what he calls his reset protocol. After a tough call, I used to try to just push through, act tough, he explains. Now I know better. I have a specific routine. 20 minutes of intense exercise, followed by 10 minutes of breathing exercises, then writing down 3 things I learned from the experience. It's not about forgetting what happened. It's about processing it efficiently, so I'm ready for the next call. David's approach demonstrates a crucial truth. Emotional resilience isn't about being tough enough to ignore pain. It's about being skilled enough to process it productively. His reset protocol isn't about suppression. It's about transformation. The rookie firefighters often think being tough means never letting anything affect you, David says. But that's not strength. That's denial. Real strength is in how quickly you can acknowledge the impact, learn from it, and get back to full capacity. This applies far beyond emergency services. Whether you're facing professional setbacks, personal disappointments, or daily stresses, the principle remains the same. The goal isn't to avoid getting knocked down. It's to get better at getting back up. Chapter 11. Mastering Pressure. Your heart pounds against your chest. Time seems to slow down. Every eye in the room is fixed on you, waiting. In this moment, you'll either rise to the occasion or crumble under pressure. We've all been there. That crucial presentation, that vital conversation, that moment when everything hangs in the balance. What determines whether you'll shine or shatter isn't your preparation or even your skill. It's your ability to maintain composure when the pressure mounts. The human body is remarkable in how it responds to pressure. When faced with high-stakes situations, your system floods with cortisol and adrenaline, hormones designed to help you survive physical threats. But in modern life, these biological responses often work against you, clouding judgment exactly when you need clarity most. This physiological hijack is why talented people sometimes fail spectacularly under pressure. Their skills haven't changed, but their body's stress response has compromised their ability to access those skills. Research shows that excessive stress hormones can reduce activity in the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making and emotional control. But here's what's fascinating. Studies of elite performers, from Olympic athletes to combat pilots, reveal that this stress response isn't fixed. Through specific training, you can actually rewire your body's reaction to pressure, transforming what would normally be debilitating stress into performance-enhancing focus. See how Navy SEALs train for high-pressure situations. They use a technique called stress inoculation, where they deliberately expose themselves to increasing levels of pressure while practicing control methods. This systematic approach doesn't just build tolerance, it fundamentally changes how their bodies respond to stress. The key lies in understanding that pressure itself is neutral. It's your relationship with it that determines its impact. This brings us to Tom Brady, whose career provides a masterclass in pressure management. During Super Bowl 51, with his team down 28-3 in the third quarter, Brady showed why he's considered the greatest quarterback of all time, not just for his physical skills, but for his mental mastery. In post-game interviews, Brady revealed his secret. Pressure is just preparation meeting opportunity. The more prepared you are, the less pressure you feel. But what's crucial to understand about Brady's approach isn't just his preparation, it's his ability to maintain physiological control in crucial moments. He developed specific routines to regulate his nervous system under pressure. Before every crucial play, Brady would go through a precise breathing sequence, 4 counts in, 6 counts out. This wasn't just about staying calm, it was about maintaining optimal arousal levels for performance. By controlling his breath, he could control his body's stress response, keeping his mind clear and his movements precise. This principle extends far beyond sports. The same mechanisms that allow a quarterback to perform in the Super Bowl can help you excel in your most challenging moments. The key lies in 3 fundamental areas. First, master your physiology. Your body's stress response begins with breath. By controlling your breathing, you can directly influence your nervous system, reducing cortisol levels and maintaining clear thinking. The technique is simple but powerful. Box breathing. 4 counts in, hold for 4, 4 counts out, hold for 4. This pattern literally interrupts your body's stress cascade. Second, reframe pressure as energy. High-pressure situations flood your system with powerful hormones. Instead of fighting this response, learn to channel it. Research shows that simply viewing stress as enhancing rather than debilitating can improve performance by up to 23%. Third, develop pressure rituals, specific sequences of actions that ground you in moments of high stress. These aren't just habits, they're anchors that keep you steady when everything else feels chaotic. Dr. Arya demonstrates these principles in action. As a trauma surgeon at one of the country's busiest emergency departments, she faces life or death decisions daily. Early in her career, she struggled with the intense pressure, finding her hands would shake during crucial procedures. I was technically skilled, she explains, but the pressure would sometimes overwhelm me. I knew I had to find a way to stay composed, not just for my sake, but for my patients. Arya developed what she calls her pre-pressure protocol. Before every high-stakes procedure, she takes exactly 3 deep breaths, mentally states pressure is privilege, and focuses on feeling her feet firmly planted on the ground. This simple ritual helps her maintain composure even in the most challenging situations. The key was realizing that pressure doesn't have to be my enemy, she says. Now, when I feel that surge of adrenaline, I don't fight it. I use it to sharpen my focus. The same energy that used to make my hands shake now makes me more precise. Her experience illustrates a crucial truth. Pressure is inevitable, but panic is optional. The difference lies in how you process the physiological response to stress. Think of pressure like water in a pipe. Too much pressure can cause pipes to burst, but the right amount of pressure can drive turbines and generate power. Your task isn't to eliminate pressure, it's to build better pipes. This means practicing pressure management in lower-stakes situations. Don't wait for crucial moments to test your composure. Create small pressure situations in daily life. Speaking up in meetings, having difficult conversations, setting ambitious deadlines. Each of these moments is an opportunity to strengthen your pressure response. The goal isn't to become immune to pressure. That's neither possible nor desirable. The goal is to develop such strong pressure management skills that you can maintain optimal performance even when stakes are highest. Your challenge: over the next week, whenever you feel pressure mounting, pause and implement the 3-3-3 protocol. Take 3 deep breaths, identify 3 things you can control in the situation, and remind yourself of 3 past successes under pressure. This simple practice will begin rewiring your pressure response, transforming stress from your enemy into your ally. Chapter 12. The Emotional Mirror. Have you ever noticed how one person's anger can poison an entire room? Or how a single calm presence can diffuse a tense situation? You're sitting across from someone you care about, words charged with emotion flying between you. Your heart races, your jaw clenches, and though you're speaking, neither of you is truly hearing. In these moments, relationships fracture not because of what's being said, but because of how emotions hijack the conversation. The science behind this phenomenon is fascinating. Your brain contains specialized cells called mirror neurons that automatically attune to others' emotional states. When someone expresses intense emotion, your brain literally mirrors their neural patterns. This biological empathy served our ancestors well, helping tribes coordinate and respond to threats. But in modern relationships, this emotional contagion often works against us. Research reveals that up to 70% of emotional communication happens non-verbally. Your tone, facial expressions, and body language broadcast your emotional state far more powerfully than your words. This means that in any interaction, you're not just exchanging information, you're exchanging emotional energy. This brings us to an essential truth. The person with the strongest emotional control sets the temperature of any interaction. Understanding this principle transforms how you approach every relationship in your life. Think about how Michelle Obama navigated 8 years in one of the world's most emotionally charged environments. As First Lady, she faced constant criticism, racial prejudice, and intense public scrutiny. Yet she maintained remarkable composure, even turning hostile encounters into opportunities for connection. During a particularly heated political debate, a heckler interrupted one of her speeches. Instead of responding with anger or dismissal, she demonstrated masterful emotional intelligence. She paused, approached the protester, and said, "Listen, one of the things I don't do well is this," referring to confrontational shouting. She then gave the audience a choice. They could listen to the heckler, or they could listen to her. The crowd chose her, and the situation was diffused without creating an enemy. What made this response so effective wasn't just the words. It was her ability to maintain emotional composure while acknowledging the tension in the room. She didn't absorb or reflect the heckler's hostility. Instead, she modeled the calm she wanted to see. This mastery of emotional mirroring isn't just useful in high-profile situations. It's essential in every relationship you navigate. When you learn to control your emotional state, you gain the power to influence the emotional temperature of any interaction. Consider these 3 fundamental principles of emotional mirroring. First, emotions are contagious, but you choose whether to be infected. Just as you wouldn't let someone with a cold sneeze on you, you don't have to absorb someone else's emotional state. Create emotional boundaries while maintaining empathy. Second, your emotional state broadcasts constantly. Every gesture, tone, and facial expression sends signals that others unconsciously mirror. By managing your own state, you literally change the emotional frequency of your environment. Third, emotional control isn't about suppression. It's about conscious choice. You can acknowledge emotions without being controlled by them, allowing you to respond rather than react. Ben's story illustrates these principles in action. As a newly promoted team leader at a tech startup, he inherited a department known for its toxic culture. Team meetings often devolved into blame games, with emotional tensions spilling over into project work. Initially, Ben tried to address the problems directly, calling out negative behavior and demanding professionalism. But this approach only increased resistance and resentment. The team's emotional chaos was infecting his own state, making him increasingly reactive. Everything changed when Ben shifted his focus from controlling others' emotions to mastering his own. Before every interaction, he took a moment to center himself. When team members became heated, he maintained steady eye contact and calm breathing. Rather than absorbing their stress, he created a space of composure. I realized I was contributing to the problem by mirroring their anxiety and frustration, Ben explains. Once I learned to maintain my own emotional stability, something remarkable happened. The team started matching my energy instead of the other way around. Over 6 months, the department's culture transformed. Meetings became more productive, conflicts were resolved more constructively, and team satisfaction scores rose dramatically. Ben hadn't changed his team directly. He had changed himself, and they naturally followed his lead. Your challenge. For the next 24 hours, in every interaction, focus on controlling your own emotions first. Before responding to any emotionally charged situation, take 3 deep breaths and check your own emotional state. Notice how others begin to mirror your composure rather than the other way around. Watch how this simple shift changes the dynamic of every relationship you encounter. Chapter 13. The Weight of Yesterday. You're climbing your personal mountain, each step heavier than the last. The weight on your back isn't physical. It's emotional baggage accumulated over years. Past hurts, unresolved conflicts, mistakes that haunt you, and regrets that whisper in quiet moments. Like a hiker who keeps adding rocks to their pack, you've been collecting pain, convinced that holding onto it somehow protects you from future harm. But what if that weight isn't protecting you at all? What if it's the very thing holding you back from reaching your peak? The human brain has a fascinating quirk. It's wired to hold on to negative experiences more strongly than positive ones. This phenomenon, known as negativity bias, served our ancestors well. Remembering where the predators lurked was more crucial for survival than recalling where the sweetest berries grew. But in modern life, this ancient programming works against us, causing us to grip tightly to emotional wounds long after they've stopped serving any purpose. Neuroscience reveals that when you replay past hurts, your brain activates the same neural pathways as when the incident first occurred. You're literally re-traumatizing yourself, strengthening those painful neural connections instead of creating new, healthier ones. It's like voluntarily choosing to live in a prison built from your own memories. Even more insidious is how past pain becomes part of your identity. You begin to define yourself by your wounds, the person who was betrayed, the one who failed, the victim of circumstance. This identity attachment creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. You unconsciously seek evidence to confirm your pain-based identity, rejecting experiences that might challenge this narrative. Kobe Bryant's journey illustrates the transformative power of letting go. In 2003, Bryant faced serious personal and legal challenges that threatened to destroy everything he'd built. His reputation was damaged, sponsors withdrew, and many believed his career was over. But Bryant understood something crucial about emotional baggage. It's not the weight that breaks you. It's how long you choose to carry it. Instead of letting these challenges define him, Bryant used them as catalysts for growth. He created the Black Mamba persona not to escape his past, but to integrate it into a new identity focused on growth and excellence. "We all have self-doubt," he once said. "You don't deny it, but you also don't capitulate to it. You embrace it." Bryant's approach to handling failure became legendary. After missing crucial shots that cost his team games, he wouldn't dwell in self-recrimination. Instead, he'd analyze what went wrong, extract the lesson, And then, this is crucial, let go of the emotional attachment to the failure. This wasn't denial or toxic positivity. It was strategic emotional release. The key to emotional release isn't suppressing or denying past pain. It's changing your relationship with it. Think of emotional baggage like hot coals. You can hold on to them, burning yourself in the process, or you can examine them briefly for their lesson and then set them down. The choice is always yours. Here's how to begin letting go. First, recognize that holding on to pain is a choice. Your past experiences happened to you, but your continued emotional attachment to them is a decision you make each day. This realization alone can be liberating. What you can choose, you can unchoose. Second, understand that forgiveness, including self-forgiveness, isn't about condoning what happened. It's about freeing yourself from the burden of carrying it. When you forgive, you're not changing the past. You're changing your present and future. Third, practice the art of emotional audit. Regularly ask yourself, what emotional weight am I carrying? Is it serving my growth, or is it holding me back? If something isn't contributing to your evolution, it's time to let it go. Observe Lena's story. After a devastating betrayal in her engagement, she spent 3 years building emotional walls so high that no one could reach her. Every potential relationship was filtered through the lens of her past pain. She didn't trust, couldn't open up, and unconsciously sabotaged connections before they could develop. The turning point came during a conversation with her mentor. "You're not protecting yourself," her mentor observed. "You're punishing yourself for someone else's actions. The person who hurt you moved on long ago. Why haven't you given yourself the same freedom?" This insight hit Lena like a thunderbolt. She realized she'd been carrying her ex-fiancé's betrayal like a shield, but it had become a prison instead. The weight of this emotional baggage wasn't protecting her from future pain. It was preventing her from experiencing future joy. Lena began the process of intentional release. She wrote letters she never sent, not to her ex, but to herself. She acknowledged her pain without judgment, examined what the experience had taught her about resilience and self-worth, and then made a conscious decision to put down this weight. The transformation wasn't instant, but it was profound. As she released her grip on past hurt, she felt lighter, more open to possibility. She started seeing opportunities instead of threats, potential instead of pain. Within a year, she had not only found a healthy relationship, but had also launched her own business, something she'd been too afraid to attempt while carrying her emotional baggage. Chapter 14. The Clarity Revolution. Your mind is a battlefield of distractions. The constant ping of notifications, the endless scroll of social media, the mounting pile of unfinished tasks, all competing for your precious mental bandwidth. Each interruption, each context switch, each moment of divided attention isn't just stealing your focus, it's eroding your emotional control. Think about your last emotional outburst. Was your mind clear in that moment? Or was it already overwhelmed, stretched thin by 1,000 tiny demands? The truth is, emotional mastery becomes nearly impossible when your mental space is cluttered with noise. The modern world has turned your attention into a commodity, and your peace of mind is paying the price. Every app, notification, and headline is designed to hijack your focus, keeping you in a state of constant mental arousal. This cognitive overload doesn't just make you less productive, it makes you more reactive, more emotional, and less in control. Research shows that the average person is interrupted every 3 minutes and 15 seconds. Each interruption triggers a cascade of stress hormones, gradually wearing down your emotional resilience. Your brain, evolutionarily designed to process one threat at a time, now faces a constant barrage of stimuli. No wonder maintaining composure feels impossible. Marie Kondo revolutionized how millions think about physical clutter, but her most profound insight extends far beyond organizing closets. Her philosophy, keeping only what sparks joy, reveals a deeper truth about mental clarity. After struggling with anxiety and overwhelm early in her career, Kondo realized that external order created internal peace. Clearing space isn't just about tidying physical objects, she explained in a 2019 interview. It's about creating room for clarity, intention, and peace. Her method of asking, "Does this spark joy?" became a powerful filter, not just for possessions, but for thoughts, commitments, and emotional investments. As her influence grew, Kondo faced mounting pressure to constantly create content, engage on social media, and maintain a public persona. Instead of succumbing to the chaos, she deliberately simplified her digital presence and professional commitments. This wasn't a retreat. It was a strategic choice to preserve mental clarity. By reducing input, she enhanced her output and maintained emotional equilibrium, even as her fame exploded. The key insight from Kondo's journey isn't just about organizing. It's about intentional reduction. Every piece of information you consume, every notification you allow, every commitment you make either adds to your mental clarity or diminishes it. There is no neutral. To reclaim your mental space and strengthen emotional control, start with these core practices. Information fasting involves deliberately reducing your exposure to non-essential input. This means turning off notifications, setting specific times for email and social media, and being selective about what media you consume. Think of your attention as a precious resource. Would you pour your life savings into low-return investments? Then why invest your limited mental energy in information that doesn't serve your growth? Structured solitude means creating dedicated periods for deep, undistracted thinking. This isn't just about being alone, it's about being alone with purpose. Start with just 15 minutes of complete digital silence. No phone, no music, no distractions, just you and your thoughts. This practice strengthens your ability to stay present and composed when emotions run high. Emotional filtering requires learning to distinguish between signals and noise in your emotional landscape. Not every feeling deserves your full attention. Some emotions are like spam mail. They demand attention but offer no value. Learning to filter these out preserves your emotional energy for what truly matters. Jordan, a pre-med student, was drowning in mental noise. Between classes, study groups, social obligations, and constant FOMO from social media, his mind never had a moment to reset. His grades were slipping, his anxiety was spiking, and his emotional reactions were becoming increasingly volatile. The breaking point came during a crucial exam when his scattered mind couldn't focus long enough to complete a single section. This wake-up call led him to implement radical changes. He deleted social media apps from his phone, established strict study hours where his phone stayed in another room, and created a morning routine of 30 minutes in complete silence before starting his day. The transformation wasn't instant, but it was profound. Within weeks, his mind felt clearer, his emotional responses more measured. When challenges arose, he had the mental bandwidth to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. His grades improved, but more importantly, his sense of inner peace deepened. The biggest change, Jordan reflected, wasn't in what I added to my life, but what I removed. Each distraction I eliminated created space for clarity and control. Your challenge for the next 24 hours. Choose one mental distraction: social media, unnecessary notifications, multitasking, and eliminate it completely. Notice how your mind feels when it's not constantly switching between tasks. Pay attention to how this newfound clarity affects your emotional responses. This is the first step toward a composed mind. Chapter 15. Chaos and Control. Mastering composure in an unpredictable world. The markets are crashing. Red numbers flash across screens worldwide as billions vanish in minutes. Your phone buzzes with urgent notifications, each one bringing worse news than the last. Your heart races, your palms sweat, and your mind screams for action, any action, to stop the bleeding. This scenario isn't hypothetical. In today's interconnected world, global chaos can erupt at any moment. A virus in one country becomes a worldwide pandemic. A political decision in one nation triggers economic tremors across continents. Natural disasters, technological failures, social upheavals. The modern world is a masterclass in uncertainty. Yet amid this perpetual storm, a select few remain unshakable. They make clear decisions while others panic, take calculated risks while others freeze, and maintain their composure while the world loses its mind. What separates these individuals from the reactive masses isn't luck or natural temperament. It's a trained ability to remain emotionally sovereign in the face of chaos. The human brain evolved to treat uncertainty as a threat, triggering the same fight-or-flight responses whether faced with a predator or a plunging stock market. This made sense for survival, but in today's complex world, this reactive programming often leads to poor decisions and emotional exhaustion. Studies show that uncertainty activates the amygdala, our brain's fear center, making rational thinking nearly impossible unless we've trained ourselves to override this response. Angela Merkel, Germany's former chancellor, exemplified this rare ability throughout her 16-year leadership. During the 2008 financial crisis, when other leaders rushed to make dramatic announcements or showed visible panic, Merkel maintained her characteristic calm. Her steady approach earned her the nickname Mutti, Mother, from the German public, who came to trust her composed leadership style during turbulent times. In 2015, when Europe faced an unprecedented refugee crisis, Merkel's composure was tested again. While other leaders reacted with fear and closed their borders, she calmly assessed the situation and made the controversial decision to welcome refugees. Whether one agreed with her policies or not, her ability to make clear-headed decisions under immense pressure demonstrated the power of emotional sovereignty. In times of crisis, Merkel once said, people look to their leaders not just for solutions, but for stability. She understood that panic is contagious, but so is composure. To master this level of emotional control, you must first understand the fundamental truth about chaos. It is inevitable, but your response to it is optional. External circumstances will always be unpredictable, but your internal state can remain stable if you build what the Stoics called an inner fortress, a mental space that external chaos cannot penetrate. This fortress is built through specific practices. The stability anchor involves identifying what remains constant despite external change. This could be your core values, daily routines, or fundamental principles that guide your decisions. When everything else is in flux, these anchors provide a foundation for composed action. Emotional contingency. Planning means mentally rehearsing your response to potential crises before they occur. Just as buildings have fire drills, your mind needs crisis drills to stay composed when real challenges arise. Radical adaptability requires training yourself to view uncertainty not as a threat, but as an opportunity for growth. This mindset shift transforms reactive stress into proactive engagement. Theo founded his tech startup during a market boom. Everyone said he was brilliant, until the tech bubble burst. Overnight, similar companies began laying off employees and shutting down. Investors pulled out of deals, and panic spread through the industry. While his competitors reacted with desperate measures, slashing prices, burning through cash reserves, or selling at a loss, Theo remained composed. He had built his company with uncertainty in mind. maintaining low overhead and focusing on sustainable growth rather than rapid expansion. Instead of joining the industry-wide panic, he saw opportunity in the chaos. While others cut their marketing budgets, he maintained his, gaining market share at lower costs. While competitors laid off key talent, he selectively hired exceptional people who suddenly became available. "The crisis didn't change our fundamentals," Theo later explained. "It just revealed who had built their business on solid principles versus who had been swimming naked when the tide went out." Within 18 months, as the dust settled, Theo's company emerged stronger while many competitors had disappeared. His composed response to chaos hadn't just preserved his business, it had transformed potential disaster into strategic advantage. Your challenge for the next week: when faced with unexpected changes or chaos, pause before reacting. Ask yourself, what aspects of this situation can I actually control? Then focus your energy exclusively on those elements, letting go of everything else. Notice how this shift in focus immediately creates a sense of composure, even when circumstances remain uncertain. Conclusion. You've come far. From the first chapter, where we confronted the harsh reality of emotional reactivity, to now, where you stand equipped with tools, strategies, and a deeper understanding of your own emotional landscape. But this isn't an ending. It's a beginning. The world hasn't changed. It's still unpredictable, still challenging, still filled with triggers and tests. What's changed is you. You now understand that between stimulus and response lies a space that you control. You've developed your emotional intelligence, built your inner fortress, and cultivated the ability to remain composed even when chaos surrounds you. Remember, this is not about perfection. Even the most composed minds have moments of reactivity. The difference is in how quickly they recognize it, how effectively they reset, and how consistently they return to their practice. Your emotional sovereignty is not a destination, but a daily practice. Some days will be easier than others. There will be moments when old patterns try to resurface, when stress threatens to overwhelm, when the world seems determined to test your composure. In these moments, remember, you are not your emotions. You are the awareness that observes them, the wisdom that understands them, and the power that chooses how to respond to them. The path ahead is yours to walk. Each step is an opportunity to demonstrate what you've learned, to strengthen what you've built, to prove to yourself that you are indeed the master of your emotional domain. You have everything you need. The tools are in your hands. The wisdom is in your mind. The power is in your choices. The question is no longer, can I control my emotions? The question is, how will I use my emotional mastery to create the life I choose? The answer begins now, with your next breath, your next choice, your next moment. Welcome to your emotionally sovereign life. Thank you for listening and for investing in yourself. I believe in you. Your potential is endless. Now go out there and create the life you deserve.